AI and your smart tech and your drone tech and your war tech
Yes.
are consuming millions of ounces of silver that aren't being produced or mined each year. And that's one of the slides. We've got 7 years now of worldwide silver deficits. And that's how I started off, as a straight supply demand commodity. If you go down this rabbit hole and study silver, you'll want to own some. Leave aside the fact that it's been money more often around the world than gold ever has been, and used to store wealth just like gold throughout the ages. That our banks, like Tanya and I were talking about earlier, are extremely volatile. They're extremely leveraged. They're creating hundreds of dollars in loans with a single dollar in deposit and cost 114 billion according to the CCPA.
Hello, Action for Canada friends. We're so glad you've joined us for tonight's show. A warm welcome to you. Our guest speaker this evening is Steve Merrill, and the title of tonight's show is What's Up with Silver? It's Wednesday, July 15th, 2026, and this is the Empower Hour. Thank you to everyone who recently attended court in support of Tanya and Action for Canada. Thank you to those of you who couldn't attend but spent time praying for the proceedings. Justice Brianna Hardwick will be delivering the oral reasons for her ultimate decision on Tuesday, September 1st, 2026. And we ask that between now and then, you will commit to praying for her, that she will stand firmly on the side of truth, that she will safeguard the innocence of children, and that she will not cave into pressure from special interest groups and radical ideologies. And finally, please consider contributing to the Legal Action Fund to help cover the cost of these expensive court proceedings. As always, we thank you for standing with Action for Canada as together we advocate for faith, family, and freedom. If this is your first time joining us, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Tanya Gaw, the founder and leader of Action for Canada. Tanya is dedicated to educating Canadians on important subjects, and every week she invites a special guest speaker to the Empower Hour who sheds light on the everyday challenges we face, including tonight's topic regarding the stability and security of our monetary system and your personal finances. Will you all please help me welcome Tanya Gaw. Hello, Tanya.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for that. Again, it's going to be a great show tonight with another important guest. And we are looking at what's happening not only in Canada, but around the world with these banking cartels that are causing a lot of concern and distrust within the financial banking institutions. And so we need to have alternatives. And so we're not here tonight to give you any financial advice, but we do want to educate you so that you can make good choices for yourself. And so before we begin and bring Steve on, I would like to do a few updates. There's some warnings as well that I'm not sure if you were aware of that took place last August. A person very close to me had gone through an ordeal, and it is based on that information that I became aware of it. I certainly didn't see it in the mainstream news. For those of you who are new, this is what Action for Canada looks like nationwide. We have chapters across the country. We're building communities within communities of like-minded people, and using our resources and our strategies, we are accomplishing amazing things. So make sure you look us up. If you want to consider being a chapter leader, just go to our join page. You'll see A4C chapters, and you can look into that further. Now, Heather had just mentioned about the court action that took place. Lee Turner did such an amazing job. And again, I just want to appeal to our viewers to please make a donation, become either a monthly donor or one-time donation. We'd be ever so grateful. We are fighting on the front lines to protect the freedom of speech and expression, the identity of women, and the innocence of our children. And so this particular court action cost upward of $30,000. And so we want to keep our war chest moving and full and ready as we continue to proceed. We look forward to the decision on September 1st. first. And we're not going to stop there. If the decision isn't in our favor, we will continue this court action because it's just too important for all Canadians and especially for our children. Now, this is the information that I was alluding to a moment ago. Are you aware? First of all, do you know who the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization is? CIRO. So CIRO is a body that is to oversee and provide security protection to our investment information. And they had a major breach a year ago on August 11th. And the individual who informed me received a letter, well, it was in the mail on January 14th, but near the end of January. The letter was basically overlooked because at first glance, I myself didn't look too further into it. I thought it was a company that was just reaching out to provide some service and wanting money in return. And about April, I started looking into this further as this person expressed some concerns. So it goes, the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization recently experienced a cybersecurity incident that involved unauthorized access to your personal information. We take data security very seriously, and we deeply regret that this incident occurred. They keep referring to it as just a mere incident, and that they say that it recently experienced this. This is 6 months later. This is nearly 6 months later. They decided to let the individuals know. They never informed me because I made a phone call on behalf of this person saying, what the heck is going on? The person on the phone tried to downplay it, never told me. I says, why didn't this make the news if it was a data breach, of this magnitude? And they said, oh, well, we don't always report it on the news. As I recently was doing more research on it, I find out it's 750,000 accounts were hacked. 750,000 Canadians. So what did this involve? So it goes, this letter tells you what personal information was affected, steps you can take to protect your personal information, and how to sign up for free credit monitoring and identity protection services. What happened? On August 11th, 2025, we detected a cybersecurity threat. We took immediate steps to secure the environment, worked with law enforcement, and this is the part that breaks me up, and hired cybersecurity experts to help us investigate. Like after the fact, a company that has this kinds of sensitive financial information from citizens nationwide after the fact is going to hire cybersecurity experts. Why weren't they already in place? After an extensive investigation, which included a complex review of the impacted data to identify affected individuals, our investigation now indicates that your personal information was accessed during this incident. Unfortunately, this includes your address, date of birth, social insurance number, and financial account number. And there's news reports that it says it went way beyond that to actually, your personal financial information of your actual investments. This is what was breached, and this is how they went about it. And the woman on the phone, when I was challenging her regarding this, she says, oh, you can't always. I said, why is it after the fact that you are hiring cybersecurity experts? She says, well, if you had, for example, personal home security and you got broken into, well, that's just, it's part of life. It's going to happen. I said, well, how about we pretend that my house is the house of the president or the prime minister? How would you secure their home? Would we have the same level of security? Like, you have the most confidential, private information. And so now this person has signed up for free, or only 2 years, that Equifax, I did provide the whole letter down at the bottom here, and it's Equifax, and I forget the other name of the institution that they'll be monitoring the dark web to make sure 750,000 accounts, these people's information doesn't pop up at some point, and that there would be fraud, identity fraud or whatever else, or whatever scams. And they say, oh, just, tell the person to change their account. Well, it's not so easy to do all of this. Anyways, the reason I'm bringing this to your attention, of course, is that the banks and the government want us onto these CBDCs. and this banking data system and to remove our cash. And it's like, how can you possibly want us to trust you to take on providing you our information and being forced into a digital currency system if you can't protect our information? Next time, if it's digital currency systems, they would have wiped out our account and taken whatever finances we had in there. It's all about control. And I need to encourage you, if you don't use cash, it's like either use it or lose it. We've repeated this often enough. I had a couple of links here. There was no headline news other than a brief news report from CTV. Globe and Mail apparently reported on it, but you have to have an account. I didn't access that. The UK and other institutions provided information on this, but hardly a peep out of the Canadian mainstream media. Now, the final point, and it is in the information page that I've included here, as that multiple proposed class action lawsuits have been filed against CIRO in Quebec and British Columbia. And so you can click on those links. I've already registered the person that was involved. They're in the beginning process of filing these. And then, of course, there was one in data breach. This is the one that was from Quebec. So you can read more about that on Action for Canada's page. I guess I should show you, if you're looking at this and a little bit shocked, or you received that letter and you want to know more. I mean, somebody listening to this is going to end up having done it. Nearly 1 million people's accounts were breached with very highly sensitive information. So I'm sure that some of you are involved. If you go to call to action, drop down to weekly emails, you will see a headline that Steve Merrill is coming on the show today. It will be in the body of that email. And then finally, as I mentioned, this is what the email looks like. We try every time we have a guest on to give you within 10 minutes an education on whatever the guest is going to be speaking on. We provide, this isn't one where necessarily we would say, oh, we need to have solutions or a call to action campaign, but this one definitely has action that if you have been affected by this, you can go into and take some action for yourselves. And then one of the steps that you may wish to take after listening to this program is to reach out to Steve and invest in precious metals. We also, under current issues, I'm just going to click on this for a moment as the drop down comes down. Just where is it? You'll see at the top here, finances. If you click on that page, we provide personal finances, economics. I've had guests on previously to cover these issues. Steve has been one of our top guests, as far as Rob Anders and Brett Oland. Really, really super presentations from them as well, with a little bit more information on here, as well as Tanner Naday. That was also an awesome presentation. And from there, you can also click on Steve's information to order precious metals from him. We work together with Steve, and so we appreciate if you would order from Steve, because he also gives the preferential treatment to Action for Canada members, and is also been very generous in donating a portion to Action for Canada. All right, so with that, Heather, I'll just stop sharing screen and back over to you.
Thank you, Tanya. We're so pleased that Steve Merrill is joining us once again. Steve is the owner of Sun City Silver and Gold Exchange in Kelowna, BC. And as always, he consistently provides expert insights into economic trends in an effort to help you understand and navigate opportunities and manage financial risks. While this isn't financial advice or an investment seminar, our goal is to give you the information you and your family need to make the best decisions for your future. And now, will you all please help me welcome Steve Merrill. Steve, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Empower Hour.
Oh, thanks very much, Heather. It's great to be back. It's really fun to be back and seeing everybody again.
Yeah,
I didn't know we were so close.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Heather and Steve. Yes, welcome back, my friend. And I want to extend such a thank you to you. When I went to Kelowna for this court hearing, you came to court both on the Tuesday and Thursday, and I so much appreciated your support. It is definitely a very important case. And then also the conversation tonight is going to be critical. I look forward to your brief presentation, and then we'll get into some Q&A, I want to extend an invitation to our viewers that if you have questions for Steve, you'll need to sign on with Zoom if you're not already on here with us, and then just go into the Q&A and put your questions in, and we'll try to get to those after the presentation. And Steve, we know that based on the headlines, there has been a lot going on with precious metals, specifically silver, in the last 7 or 8 months. I mean, we went to the highs and then these lows. A lot of Canadians are wondering what is going on with precious metals and how significantly undervalued it is compared to gold, that it remains undervalued, and we're looking for that reset. And possibly you'll be covering that tonight, and definitely in the Q&A we'll talk about this. And we really want to encourage our viewers as well that if you bought when the price was a little high, don't panic about it. Silver has been very steady. Precious metals is always going up. There will be corrections. I have no doubt about that, although we don't know the timeline. So anyways, what would your response be to that?
Well, fundamentally, nothing's changed. On a supply-demand basis, there's no greater story than the silver story. We all love gold, but really gold's just a pretty rock. It stores wealth and it looks great around your neck. Whereas silver is the second most widely used commodity on Earth. So it's also a pretty rock, and it has stored wealth like gold throughout the ages. And it's also 9,999 other things. And that silver has, been reported to be a critical element in over 10,000 industrial or commercial applications. So as a commodity, it's the second most widely used commodity on Earth after oil. So, and it's also money, and it's heavily, heavily suppressed by a group of bankers. We call them the gold cartel in our space. And for all the reasons, it's money. And for all the reasons the bankers do it is to keep you away from it, to keep the news dull, to keep it boring, even though it hasn't been so boring lately. But, I think the last time we were together, Tanya, we talked about a short squeeze, and we talked about the movie Dumb Money, right, which portrays the a real life event that portrays the short squeeze in the GameStop stock in early 2022. And now a couple of big bankers, hedge funds, one of the biggest in the world called Citadel, run by Ken Griffin, and another run by Steve Cohen. These are Manhattan legends, if you will. And they got on the wrong side of this trade. They were shorting the stock. They were up against a army, if you will, of regular people, dummies, according to the bankers, who got together and weren't intimidated by their antics, and they collectively held the line and didn't sell their stock back to the market so that it could be scooped up at cheaper prices by these two big giant hedge funds. Well, that's what was happening over the course of this last winter. The banks were being squeezed, and by mid-January, the banks were really feeling some pain because they've got forward contracts in this space that have silver priced at 30 and 32 and 34 and 35 and 40, 43 and $45, and with silver pushing $100 like it was in January, and then touching 121, I think it was, by late January. The banks, especially a couple of big ones, names one of which was fined $920 million back in 2016 for this exact type of shell game. We're looking at red ink and blood all over the field. And the regulators, just like in the movie GameStop, sort of acted at behest of the big money, closed their eyes to the dummies, the small money, the dumb money, if you will, and allowed these banks to escape. And on January 30th, we all remember, we saw the largest single-day drop in any commodity ever in commodity market trading history in New York. Mm-hmm. A 34% move down in a matter of a couple hours, really, in New York on the final trading day of the month, which is when these banks have to square up these options and these forward sales, these contracts, which are all paper, and allow them to escape. They actually turned off the machines on 2 occasions in January to ease the pain and to allow them to escape out the back door. Now, did they escape? Not really. They're still on the hook for a lot of these contracts, but a lot of air was let out of the market, obviously, with a 34% collapse in a single day. Normally, under any other normal circumstance, a commodity moving down, especially a commodity as widely traded as silver or any commodity like gold or natural gas or copper even, a 5% move down on a daily basis or even a few hours would warrant the regulators to halt the market, stop all trading, and investigate quickly, whose fat finger hit the wrong button or whose fat finger, didn't move off the zeros and they entered, 12 zeros instead of 2 zeros. And that never happened. There was no halt in trading at all. The regulators kind of closed their eyes and just let this thing run right till the end of the day in January and just destroyed what was, one of the most epic looking bull commodity charts you've ever seen in your life, which is the chart we showed, I think, the last time we were together, which shows a 50-year, 55-year bull market building an ultimate cup and handle chart in silver that really is still intact and is still very much in play. Nothing's changed fundamentally. All that's changed is the paper positions of a bunch of banks who don't care much for silver, who want silver to be, and gold to be sold as best they can, so that they can either come in and scoop up cheaper metal, which they're short of, or dissuade people from looking at this space. And it gives a lot of financial planners and a lot of brokers a lot of ammunition. Oh, look what happened to silver. Look at the volatility. It's much too crazy for the average person. And they all sing that tune like songbooks, like, lemmings, if you will, the following week after the big move down in late January. But you've got a question.
Yeah, well, I was going to add there that I think that as they were seeing people emptying their investments and moving from stocks and holding their money in the banks and pulling it out and investing in precious metals, specifically silver, I think that this was rocking the banks. And yourself and other individuals that I know that work with precious metals in selling them had even come against the obstacles of banks refusing to transfer the money to the investments to yourself on behalf of your clients. And so the banks, I think, were being rattled by this. I think the institutions knew they were losing control as that correction was finally, we were thinking, okay, that correction in the ratio between gold and silver was finally on the way up and going to happen. And what is it? I think you were talking in US dollars, but it reached somewhere around $150 Canadian. And I saw today it's down around $81 for an ounce of silver. And so I think the banks began to panic. I call them the central banksters. And you've got the central banks, the International Monetary Fund, the Bank of International Settlement. All of these institutions are like private groups that aren't working in the best interest of the financial institutions that they're supposed to serve, like the individuals within the countries. It's like they're serving the financial elites, and they are about, I'm going to say it, I think that this is a massive wealth transfer. It is theft, moving towards that direction on behalf of these institutions. I'm not sure if you agree or not, but there is lying and cheating and stealing going on, I think, in the background. And I think the only way for citizens to be in control of their investments is, as others and yourself have said, if you can't touch it, you don't own it. So what would you say? Because I've been watching this volatility happen in these last months. I don't want to even say I was concerned about it, because I feel very good about being invested in silver, and that the price will continue to, whether it drops, and then it will continue to go up once again.
Well, it's true, Tanya. We did have a really, really record fall and winter season. We actually had 3 or 4 weeks through December and January when we couldn't keep up with the orders. And these are orders from 1% of the 1% of the population who can think straight enough to even own a physical silver coin or gold coin. And we did experience, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit, a couple of instances with one particular bank. It's a big name bank out of Vernon who outright refused to wire funds, and thought that, their client was being, taken or scammed. So it was the fraud alert. And this one old fella, he wanted 1,000 ounces of silver, and he had an opportunity to buy it all for about $65,000, I think. And during the heat of the moment, 2-3 weeks later, he's beating on the door of his bank. Please wire the funds. Please wire the funds. They kept refusing, and he never did get the wire through. And really, the bank should be buying him 1,000 ounces of silver, in my opinion, and delivering it to him at the price that he had agreed to with us. But you're right. I mean, the bankers at the highest levels know what silver and gold are. They are true money. They're true wealth. They represent true wealth. They've been used to store wealth for thousands of years. And throughout our generation, we've been bamboozled a little bit to believe that dollars are wealth, when dollars are in fact created as debt. And, when people say to me, invest in silver, I say, we don't really help people invest in silver. We help you trade a currency that is failing, and anybody can see and feel that is failing, and will fail completely, for a currency or money, gold and silver, that has never, ever failed to store wealth and be money. So we're in that paradigm where, the boomers especially tend to believe that, wealth can be created from thin air. And, the way we use our Visa cards, our generation, and borrow money and enable the banks to enslave us even further, suggests that they've done a good job on us. They've really done a good job on us. And it takes a lot to battle with your financial planner or your banker to get out of the banks and the banking system. Now, no one can be completely removed from it, because we need it to often pay our phone bills online and different things, but you sure can remove your savings from the banking system. And in you doing so, you reduce the amount of leverage that the banks are using to create even more money. The banks today in Canada can create unlimited sums of dollars with virtually nothing on deposit. We have one of the grossly obscene fractional reserve requirement banking systems that I think the Western world knows. And as we've talked about before, our banks were bailed out back in 2010. I've got a slide at the end of this presentation to remind everybody that Canadian banks are in rough shape. They've really gambled a lot and never really paid their debts. They've never never been called out.
And now as well, I don't know if people know, but in the last budget, starting actually pretty much as soon as the Liberals gained a majority back in 2015, I think it was the 2016 budget that they tabled in March, and in maybe it was 2019 actually. And it's now got, instead of a bank bail-in where the government will bail out a bank, it's now got a government bail-out, which means they go into our funds and our safety deposit boxes in order to get the bank out of trouble. And so that's also one of the reasons why we've been having these shows, so that we could help educate citizens that your finances and your investments aren't safe within the banks. And especially with how volatile everything has become. And so that's one of the good reasons why I think investing in precious metals is something for people to look at least for a portion of their investments. And you're right, like we do need to deal with the banks. You still need to pay your bills, and now no longer can you go to a Shaw store. Well, it's very hard to anyways. I guess you could technically maybe go to Shaw and pay your phone bill or, for your television, but everything is become auto payments. And so we are reliant at some level on the bank. So you do have to have some money in the bank. You need some emergency money as well. So before you go into your presentation, we'll have more conversation after that as well, Steve, is that you had noted that how important silver is as far as its use in technology and other things. And I was reading an update today, and I never realized this, is that we understand that silver is needed in cell phones and what is another one? I had some things written down like.
Solar panels are the
solar
giant
panels.
driver of late, but AI and your smart tech and your drone tech and your war tech
Yes.
Are consuming millions of ounces of silver that aren't being produced or mined each year. And that's one of the slides. We've got 7 years now of worldwide silver deficits. And that's how I started off, as a straight supply demand commodity. If you go down this rabbit hole and study silver, you'll want to own some. Leave aside the fact that it's been money more often around the world than gold ever has been, and used to store wealth just like gold throughout the ages. It's an amazing story. It's an incredible story.
Precious metals throughout history has always been a good investment, and with the validity and the lack of security and confidence that we have in our banking systems right now, this is something that we just want our members to be aware of, so that if things go really south with the banks, you're not left without a backup system. So, Steve, over to you. I look forward to your presentation.
Well, folks, I'm just going to start with two big pieces of news from last fall. This one was one of the biggest. On the heels of a visit by the Trump team, his trade team, to China, there was an announcement, I think within 24 hours of the team leaving China, that the Chinese government was going to step in and regulate the amount of silver, refined silver, leaving the country. And most people don't know this. 70%, almost 70% of all silver is refined to pure in China. And it's given the Chinese now quite a hold on who receives silver for their various industries. A lot of us have heard that China mines 95% of rare earths. They've effectively now included silver along with those 95% of rare earth elements and control them. And for their own processes, including solar panels, which are produced in China, and electric vehicles, which are being produced in China, silver is a vital ingredient. So there's a slide here from Bloomberg about China restricting silver exports, and that the announcement actually said that Chinese government is going to issue the licenses to those exporters. So effectively have a de facto control of who in China is exporting silver. And, by default, the Chinese government is in control of 70% of silver, refined silver that's used in, like I say, the 10,000 things that we need it for. Within days of the Chinese making that announcement in late October, the U.S. Geological Survey made an announcement about adding silver and copper to their strategic metals list. And you can see the definition there of what constitutes a critical mineral or mineral essential to the economic and national security of the U.S., which is true, and that there would be no industry, war industry, without silver. So it is a critical element. And some of you might remember that way back in the late 60s, it was the military industrial complex and certain senators who worked on their behalf who were lobbying Congress in the late 60s to remove silver from the coinage in the late 60s, which they ultimately did do, because it was so critical an ingredient for the manufacturing of missiles and bombs and bullets and other tech. At the time, in 1968, the US was consuming 100 million more ounces a year of silver than they were mining domestically. You've got a situation now where silver is on the critical list, and for all the right reasons. And something's up. I mean, some of you probably watched Fox News here yesterday, where Scott Bessent, was the Treasury Secretary, was touring Jesse Waters around the Treasury offices and showing some of the pictures of old silver certificates on the wall, and made a statement about silver being part of the monetary system. It's no longer, and that your dollars, your silver certificates, were redeemable for silver.
In times of financial uncertainty, safeguarding your assets is increasingly important. In response to ongoing inflation, economic challenges, and market instability, many Canadians are adopting the timeless strategy of investing in precious metals. Historically, gold and silver have held their value, safeguarding your assets against economic turmoil. Action for Canada is pleased to announce our partnership with Steve of Sun City Silver, providing valued members of A4C with expanded investment opportunities designed to help you achieve your financial goals. Steve is an ally of the Freedom Movement, and he's offering members of Action for Canada exclusive access to some of Canada's premier prices. By leveraging his connections with Silver Gold Bull, you can access competitive rates for securing your precious metals. Silver Gold Bull is a trusted Canadian leader, offering live pricing 24/7 and boasting nearly 400,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. For an order of $5,000, be sure to indicate you're an Action for Canada member and receive a complimentary 1967 silver dollar, courtesy of Sun City Silver. Expand your collection further by referring a new customer who places a similar order, and Steve will reward you with a special bonus thank you gift. Your purchase with Steve is a dual investment. You invest in your future while simultaneously supporting the Freedom Movement with a percentage of each sale benefiting Action for Canada. For more information, be sure to visit actionforcanada.com/purchasing-precious-metals/. Secure your assets, protect your future, support Action for Canada and the Freedom Movement. The information presented is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to provide financial, legal, or tax advice, as we are not licensed financial advisors, accountants, or attorneys, and cannot provide professional counsel. Be advised that the content and information provided does not create a client relationship. We recommend you consult with a qualified professional advisor before making any financial, legal, or tax decisions. Please note that Action for Canada is not responsible for an individual's financial outcome. Remember, your decisions are your own, and we recommend doing your own research before making any investment.
It was quite the statement that he made. Anyways, it seems the Treasury is quite aware, and Scott Bessent, who apparently is the largest component of his hedge fund when he ran a hedge fund, was in gold. He understands the metals, and a lot of buzz after yesterday's piece he did on Fox News. So everybody's asking what happened? Why is silver dropping? We were squeezing the heck out of these banks. Silver had jumped past its previous all-time high from 1980 of $50, and people like me were going, this squeeze is on. We know why silver is moving up. We had days where it was up 5%. We had days it was up 7 and 8%. And by late January, it had touched 121, and literally the banks were looking at billions, not tens of billions, but hundreds of billions in losses. And lo and behold, with the Asian market closed and the London market closed on Friday afternoon, the last trading day in January, we got the smackdown that a lot of us should have really been anticipating. Nobody would have thought they could do this in one day, but this is the racketeering operation that they operate. A whole bunch of paper was sold in a Friday afternoon, paper representing silver that's not in the vaults. So there was nothing fundamentally changed about the silver market or the commodity that is silver. There was no giant mine that was discovered that was going to reduce the shortage of silver coming to the market for industry every year. Nothing like that. There was no announcement that they're going to use gold instead of copper in all these batteries for these EVs. Nothing like that. Nothing fundamental. This was strictly a paper play. We've seen it many, many hundreds of times previously. It generally always happens on a Friday afternoon and generally always in New York, where there is no real physical market. It is a paper price setting mechanism only, and it's slowly losing all credibility, if not already. Nobody's looking to the COMEX for any physical metal, but there is still a lot of speculation going on there. Since this big drop and since these games have been played, there's been a knockback of the open interest in the New York market that has fallen to about 20 years lows, which suggests that a lot of the speculators, a lot of the commercial traders who are just in it for ounces on the dollar either way and a dollar profit have left the system. But the comment here was really well written. It was an entirely engineered flush as the bankers were fatally trapped and caught in the mother of all short squeezes. There, that second paragraph, you can read along the rest there. As silver hit 120, the leveraged banks were looking at their shoes, and there was blood all over the floor, and something had to be done. And effectively, they were bailed out by the regulators, who didn't allow anything normal to take place, in that they would have otherwise halted trading and figured out what the heck has just happened. But no, not with silver. They allowed it to fall further than any commodity has ever fallen in a single day ever in our lifetime. We'll leave that for a sec. So here's a good graph that reminds people that for the last, this one shows 5 years, there's been an 800 million ounce deficit between what has been consumed and mined out of the ground. These numbers are produced by a group called the Silver Institute. And guess who runs the numbers? It's a heavily skewed survey where certain big banks are also on are members of this club. So there's a lot of monkeying with the numbers. There's a lot of suggestion that there's a lot of actual evidence that they revise numbers backwards from previous years to make them look a little less dramatic in the current year. And one of those examples came in the case of solar. Solar installations were up some 73%. I think you can see. Well, it's not in this chart, but solar installations in China were up some 73%. I think in 2025 over 2024 is a huge number. But the Silver Institute suggested that silver consumption was only up 4% due to solar. So they really do fudge these numbers, but we still lean on them as evidence that silver is in a structural deficit. There are no large above ground stockpiles, and the demand continues to grow. And it's especially coming from this new tech and these EVs and so on. And here's just a quick example of what Samsung announced last year. And I found this slide with the number that was really startling. On a conservative estimate, it's the fourth paragraph down there. If 16 million EV users chose to adopt this new battery, which requires as much as a kilogram of silver in this new process, the silver carbon process, it would require 514 million more ounces of annual silver demand, which is roughly 60 to 65% of annual mine production. There's just no way that mine production can keep up to this kind of demand. Mine production in silver peaked in 2016, folks. And there's absolutely, and because 70% of all mined silver comes to the market as a byproduct from other gold and zinc and copper and lead miners, there's no way to retool these big mines to add more silver. In fact, if all the stars aligned, I heard one analyst at the WRC conference in Vancouver saying, and he was a mining executive, if all of the stars aligned, we could potentially revert to 2016 peaks for silver production by 2035. So there's really no new production on the horizon and only new demand. And it's startling new demand. And I could go on about, the AI demand and the drone type technology that we're using in these ridiculous wars, and the chaos around the world. These drones don't work without silver, and they require more and more of it. Our cell phones are and our keyboards and everything else under the sun, like I say, is growing. And here's another chart that I picked up. I think this is the one I was talking about. The growth this year alone consumes about 11% of the world's annual silver supply, and that's just China, where China installed 464 gigawatts of new solar activity, up 62%. I was wrong, not 73 from the previous year. So it's smoking silver demand, and these banks who are short silver on paper are really starting to feel the pinch. Here's one example of what's happening in Asia. And there's been some big news in Asia, and that Asia's apparently, for the big banks in Asia where you can trade silver, are eliminating by July 24th, just a few days away, any margin that's allowed in the futures market trading in Shanghai. Their plan could be to eliminate speculation in China completely in the silver market and revert to a strictly physical market. You want silver on our exchange, you pay for it, it's the price it is, and we deliver it to you, or you come and pick it up. This chart shows the disparity between the paper price in New York and the physical price in Shanghai, which has been consistent now for a year. We had some trading days, and there's a lot of guys tracking this premium of real silver versus paper silver in China, where you can get delivered real silver, and the paper price in New York where you can't. And currently, just as of the other day, it's a $6.70 per ounce premium, 11.5%. But there is some big news coming. On July 24th, 4 big banks that I've heard of so far, including ICBC, the big Chinese commerce bank, is eliminating speculation. You won't be able to just trade silver contracts with leverage or with a small amount in your account, like a margin account. You're going to need a fully paid account, and the margin will cease to exist. It's really startling what's coming. There could be some real fireworks here this month as we see this transpire. The bottom line is slowly the paper players are walking away from this New York market, and the physical silver market is moving to China. And in a pure physical market, like with gold, where dollars only ever expand and the amount of silver and gold are finite, you might never see the price ever fall. People ask me all the time, why is the price falling? I remind them it's the paper price that's falling. Fundamentally, nothing's changed. The amount of ounces in your safe or in your own possession haven't changed at all, and nobody's lost anything, obviously, until you had to sell an ounce of silver at these prices, and only if you paid $100. But yeah, I know a lot of you out there who listen to us and listen to people like me bought a lot of silver at well under $50. So even under at those rates that you paid, $90 silver like we are today, Canadian, or close to it, doesn't look like a bad return. But we did get excited over the winter, that's for sure. And the premium is still in place in Shanghai. And it's likely going to get a lot narrower as people, whoops, a lot greater as people walk away from this New York market who actually need real silver. Another stat out of China, this last March, China imported more silver than any other month in 20 years. Now, they've been exporters of silver for a number of months, you can see on the chart, in that they are the world's largest exporter of silver. 70% of all refined silver, as we just learned, originates in China. All the refining capacity is there, and it's no good to anybody, any industry, not Samsung or Toshiba or anybody, until it's refined. So here we got a situation where possibly China has exported all the silver they possibly can in refined form for their large industrial customers, and is forced to, as we saw this last March, import now and compete with everyone else looking for silver, and which is likely to cause even further deficits. So a huge import month. I had another, interesting slide here regarding India, which is the largest consumer of silver. A lot of the refined silver then ends up in India, originates in China. Well, the Indian government decided they're going to curb imports. Now, a lot of Indians import silver like they do gold, with gold at higher prices. A lot of silver was being imported in bullion form to hedge against the rupee and to hedge against the falling rupee. And most Indians are fully aware that gold and silver are money. And this has curbed some big demand, and perhaps is a quid pro quo aimed at bailing out certain parties who are short silver, banks, or helping out their Chinese partners who are importing record amounts of silver and trying to keep up with the refining capacity. But you can see in that bottom paragraph just how much silver was being imported and how much it has grown over the years. As gold prices get a bit out of reach for Indians, they were leaning on silver, and we saw some incredible numbers last fall of how much silver was being imported into India, both by industry and by Indians, 1 billion people who know darn well that the rupee isn't a place to store any value. And then just another bullish stat there. And here's the long-term chart that I referred to earlier, this incredible cup and handle chart that some chartists and technicians call the greatest commodity chart they've ever seen. It's still very much in play. And the suggestion here is that 120 was a breakout. We did break through finally after decades through that $50 glass ceiling that had been holding since 1980 somehow, despite falling supply everywhere and increased demand everywhere, but a giant paper market that has been skewing the true supply-demand fundamentals for years. Well, we broke through that this last fall finally, and ran up to 120, but the chart is still very much in play. And the suggestion here is that the 120 run was a breakout, and the breakout is holding, and the real run has just begun. And there's some indicators that when this starts to move again, and it can move very quickly, that silver is going to cause a lot of pain for these banks that are remaining in these positions. And a lot of industry is going to be chasing silver. And fortunately, a lot of us already own it. I wouldn't dare sell any unless I really had to buy my granddaughter a new car, and that's not happening anytime soon. We've noticed over the last 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of new people, a lot of existing stackers who really do watch this market closely are coming back to us. And I think last week alone, I sold 4,500 ounces of silver, 5,500 ounces of silver to existing people, buying another box, 500 ounces, buying another 2 boxes, 1,000 ounces, and loading up again. And I've been witness to it. This last chart is just kind of a fun one of, where's the dollar going? Well, when the dollar was anchored to silver, it used to buy a lot more than it did today. In the 60s, when the US dollar was still anchored to silver, you could buy a gallon of gas with I think you could fill your tank with a gallon. The fiat dollar has obviously replaced the silver dollar. We've got about a 90% loss in purchasing power just since the late 60s, and that's being conservative. And we're well on our way, obviously, to becoming a Zimbabwe dollar. Now, some people believe Trump's got a plan. I'd love to think he does. Comments like from the Treasury Secretary about the Treasury perhaps issuing new money, a Treasury note, U.S. government note. Last night on Fox News, Besson said all the gold is in Fort Knox. None of us actually believe that, but he said it. He's on the hook for it. I'd like to think it is there. I'd like to think that the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar will continue to, serve the world as it has. But these CBDCs are out there as well, and there's a big competition going on. If Trump really has sort of reset the system, and maybe it's already happened, and maybe it's just an announcement we're waiting to hear from. I mean, that would be a good thing, but who knows? The trend of the U.S. dollar and the Canadian dollar are still very much in place. They're going down as more and more is printed, and the exit strategy for anybody who doesn't want to get caught up in the Zim dollar collapse, or a Argentinian peso collapse, or a loonie collapse, is truly silver and gold, and more silver than gold, in my opinion, because the silver to gold ratio has never been more favorable towards silver. Historically, about 15 to 1 for hundreds of years. And in the ground, the ratio of silver to gold, in Mexico at least, where 30% of all mined silver originates, is 7. So how is it that 7 ounces of silver coming out of the ground for every 1 ounce of gold is generating a price like we see today, which is about 70 times cheaper than gold? So silver is offside at least tenfold from where it should be relative to gold. And I've said for years, you want to own more gold, buy silver. Or I've said as well, buying silver is like buying gold at 90 to 95% off today. And who wouldn't like to buy gold today at 90% off? Well, you can, and it's 90% off still, and it comes in the form of silver, and it's still available. And we're still here to serve you if you're interested in adding more or getting your feet wet in this space. I like to follow up or end with a reminder, especially to Canadians who aren't familiar with the banking collapse that we experienced about 15 years ago, that our banks, like Tanya and I were talking about earlier, are extremely volatile. They're extremely leveraged. They're creating hundreds of dollars in loans with a single dollar in deposit, and not even that. And it got out of hand back in 2010, 2011, during the great financial crisis, when a lot of these banks took on a lot of positions in bad mortgages and needed our money. It cost every man, woman, and child across the country $3,500, and cost $114 billion according to the CCPA. CIBC, BMO were the biggest receivers. BMO received $34 billion from Canadian taxpayers, although it's not directly from taxpayers. It was printed by the Fed and the Bank of Canada during Carney's early phases of being the Bank of Canada chairman. Interestingly enough, he'd just come on board in early 2008, and he was fully on board with saving his blue-blooded banker buddies in high places when they printed all this money and bailed out the banks. And did they make the problem go away? Of course not. They actually exacerbated the problem and probably made it 100 times worse today. And therein lies that bail-in language in the 2016 budget. And now the language is bail in that these banks are too big to bail out the conventional way. And they've got so much in bad assets and leveraged assets that there's no way they could be bailed out in the conventional form like we did a few years ago, or the banks, the big banks, the central banks did a few years ago. Now they're looking for your money. And the bulk of people's savings in Canada, at least, are in government secured, treasury instruments and RSPs. The word register, I'd like to remind people, means to assign legal title. So a lot of your money is already being assigned to what I believe is a bankrupt corporation called Canada. And I'm not a big fan of RSPs. And for that reason, we're helping a lot of people sort of liquidate some of their RSPs and get into physical metal and get it into your hands, because, again, silver and gold are without counterparty risk. They require nobody's permission, nobody's consent. They require no banker, no broker, and no bureaucrat to to advise you or to help you spend them, use them, hoard them, or trade them. It's really the only unencumbered, counterparty risk-free form of money in the world today. So I act as an agent. I'm the largest dealer in British Columbia for Silver Gold Bull, which is a 5-star dealer, a 5-star account with hundreds of thousands of verifiable 5-star reviews. And we've done hundreds of millions of dollars of business with them. We can save you money. Just today, I quoted 84.75 Canadian on a silver bar. The best price showing on the website was just over $86 an ounce for that same silver bar. So the wholesale buying power that I have with Silver Gold Bull that I'd love to pass along to my awake and supportive friends at Action for Canada is available to you. We're going to save you a little bit of money. We guarantee delivery, and we set up an email account so that we can track all the inflows that come through the Action for Canada network so that you get a discount and you get a little bonus. And it's A4Cmetals at proton.me. And or my phone number is down there as well. And just the last shot, there's a little picture of my little shop in Kelowna where, back in 2001, we put a sign on the door and got a little press for rejecting people that were wearing a mask or were vaccinated. And the fake news in Kelowna blew it up and we had some fun with it. But I like to remind people that we're on the side of truth and long have been. And I was happy to sit with Tanya in the courtroom as for as long as I could and sit beside that on the one side of the aisle who really does need to be called out and really does need to be shut down. And I'm sure hopeful for a positive decision here in September. So I'll wrap it up there. I've been a little long. I didn't plan to be that long, but again, at the end of the day, the silver's long-term trend is very much in place. And really, the fun, we had a lot of fun over the winter, and it's been a bit slow, but it's picked back up again. Extremely, it's not quite like the winter. It's funny the nature of crowds, how people jump on bandwagons. But I tell you, 80% of the orders I did, Tanya, over the winter when things were so busy were for existing people. People who had bought at $10 and $20 and $30 weren't afraid to buy at $100 because they too felt this was it. This was the big breakout. And so we did fill a lot of orders for a lot of existing people at those prices, but there's really nothing to worry about. And for so many of those people, they've just stackers. It's in their nature. And the $10 and $20 and $30 silver that they added many years ago has helped ease the pain of paying $100. But it's not like you're not paying close to $100 even today at $85 an ounce, which is about the best price you can get on an ounce of silver today, Canadian. It's still extremely cheap. And a 65-to-1 ratio to gold. It's so horribly skewed. It should be closer to 10. And I truly believe we're going there.
Well, yeah, Stephen, first of all, thank you for your presentation. It definitely wasn't too long. I think that was important information. And I thank you because you have just been such a friend of the freedom movement. I always appreciate your story of the stand that you were willing to take during the so-called COVID scam. And you set a precedent for others. And then as well, you have been so ready to give of your time to come on with Action for Canada, give these presentations, help to educate, our fellow Canadians who we want to be in a good position if by chance the banks fail and let them down. And so when you're talking about the price of gold right now, and comparison, the ratio to silver, I understand you've said 7-to-1. It should be at least 7-to-1, which if an ounce of gold right now is $6,000, am I hearing you right in saying that an ounce of silver should therefore be $600 per ounce if it's 10-to-1? Is that what we're talking about? And
absolutely.
Yeah. And so I want people to understand the calculation of the corruption that's going on in prohibiting the price of silver to actually reach, its worth, what its actual worth has been in history. And so that's really important to remember. And that's why I do believe that Trump is taking some major steps in the U.S. And I think that he strategically addressing Iran, Britain. We're seeing the news. You really have to listen to legitimate people in the background who can lay out the strategy and plan. But it looks like he understands very clearly as a businessman what's going on financially. And he is taking some serious steps to turn that around and bring wealth back to Americans, not only through their jobs in manufacturing, but also resetting and dealing with these banksters. And as I said at the onset, I believe that the monetary fund and the World Bank, they have taken advantage of people because they had the power and control to do that. We're paying taxes, we're paying interest. That interest, it should just not be on the shoulders of Canadians or the future generations. And so what we see the government making announcements where they have spent billions of dollars, say, helping people in Africa or in India, that you can see that money and you hear that it's not actually making it to the people that are in need. Where is that money going? Well, we're seeing, I believe, this wealth transfer where I say it's the biggest theft in the history of the world that we're witnessing. And that if these people were to go to jail, our debt should be wiped out because it's a fabricated debt. And so this is something very, very critical and serious. Now, I want to also make sure people know you ended with saying that in BC that you operate and do business, but I want our members to know that you help people Canada-wide. You can help anybody from any province in either buying silver, gold, transferring some of your investments. And I also agree with you as far as the RSPs and RIFs. We all thought that was a good plan maybe 30 years ago because I call it some sort of Ponzi scheme, because they say, oh yeah, invest in an RSP and we're going to give you a little bit of money up front, but then get to retirement. And the penalties on people to pull that money out is quite extreme. And you can take out your maximum every year after retirement. But for myself, I've been helping an other individual with their retirement that they'd had in a RIF. Sorry, I know I'm covering a lot of things here after your presentation, but I've been dealing with this myself with someone that I've been assisting. And if they take a hit on money that they've transferred from stocks and bonds into silver under a RIF, now it's like, I'd like to, in kind, remove that silver from a RIF. You're still going to end up paying the government upwards of 30% taxes if you take that whole lump sum money out. But because of where the price of silver is, you wait a couple of years, you're going to gain back that money that you've just lost having to pay taxes to the government. And if it reaches $600, you're going to far surpass that and the government doesn't get a penny of it because now you've removed it from your RIF. Are you following what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking advantage of a commodity that happens to be money that's at an all-time low, really. Mm-hmm. You look at just the chart, adjusted chart for inflation for silver from 1980, and you'll see it's about $4. I mean, adjusted for inflation, silver's never been cheaper. How many houses can you buy today for the same price you paid for in 1980? Exactly zero. Your house is inflated 20 times since 1980 in so-called value. Silver has just breached its 1980 high last fall and is hardly over that today. And you can thank almost 5 decades of intervention by the same bankers who would rather you be plugged 100% into their system than plugged into a sovereign system like silver and gold for that gift. They have made silver on sale to the 1% of the people, the public, who have the ability to spell silver, which is our crowd. So take advantage of it. You might take a hit on an RSP withdrawal, but I believe you're going to I believe 100%, you're going to make that back when all this washes out. And silver is repriced according to its true fundamentals. And if it's ever priced again like gold is, as a monetary asset, not just a commodity. We buy it as a monetary asset. Well, if it's a monetary asset, it should be trading against gold like it has historically at about a 10 to 15 ratio. But it's in the ground that silver is coming out at a 7-to-1 ratio, and that's in Mexico, where 30% of all mined silver. So it's just not feasible. All the silver coming out of the ground is being consumed and then some. All the gold that's coming out of the ground is still above ground. None of it is ever destroyed. Whereas just about all the silver coming out of the ground is used in industry and then some, and a lot of it is never recycled, like with your torpedoes that are laying waste with 500 ounces of silver every tomahawk laying waste in the desert. It's not being recycled. It's not being recovered.
Okay,
so the ratio that we're at right now, 65, does not make any sense at all on a historical basis.
Right. Okay, so thank you for that, Steve. I'm going to just go through a few questions that are coming in, and then we're at the top of the hour here, so we'll wrap up the show. And anyway, so somebody said, regarding fraud, which type and brands of silver are more common being fake, so people can be careful buying on the street? Oh
boy. A Canadian Mint 1-ounce bars are very popular and can be knocked off by certain Chinese parties, and I've seen a few myself. If you're buying something off the street, at the very least, have a digital scale with you. A $25 digital scale that you can buy at Walmart, I think, will help you if it's properly calibrated. At least weigh that coin or bar to the 31.1 grams that it should weigh if it's an ounce. If that weight on a properly calibrated scale is even off by, a gram, then there's cause for concern. A 30-gram gold bar is not a legitimate bar if your scale's working properly. Short of having a scale, there's some fancier equipment. There's apparently on Amazon, I've heard about this, it's called a pinging machine, and it works with an app on your phone, and you put the coin in this little, it looks like an ice cream scooper almost, and it sits in there, and you flick it with your finger or you tap it with this little bar, and it resonates a frequency that's heard by the app on the phone, and it tells you if that's a 90% pure coin or a 80% pure silver coin. If that's the case, in Canada, we had 80% pure coins. That's one way, but you might also meet at a coin shop in your local town too, if you're buying something off the street. And I wouldn't mind if I love when people can get a deal on Facebook Marketplace or something. And if you're in my area and you want to come into the shop and I've got a $2,000 machine, I'll verify that it's pure and real.
Okay.
But failing that, maybe find your local coin shop guy. He might have a testing, a piece of testing equipment that will help verify that item.
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's a very, legitimate concern. I know we were talking about the banks and fraud earlier, about why banks are now sending alerts to people in transferring their funds to you. Fraud is one side of it. I know that banks also are wanting their customers to buy precious metals through them. There's been a bit of that, but I was in the bank yesterday, again with an elderly person who wanted to take out $5,000, and they were rejected from doing so. And the one branch didn't give the courtesy of explaining to them, look, you know what, because they said, why are you taking this money out? And she kind of went, none of your business. And then finally said, for a car, what kind of car? And they saw that it wasn't a habit of this person to take out the cash. So on the one side, I appreciate the security system that now is in place. But on the other side of it, this is because we know that especially the Indian community within India are putting out these scams, convincing individuals to buy cards and to provide them cards and using the cash to do that. And it's become very, very concerning. Our elderly are usually hit for that. So I want our members to know, don't get irate with your bank if they're saying, no, we don't want you to remove that money. But there does come to a point, say, you know what, no no, this is not fraud. I'm not being coerced. And what I do with my money is my business. And, you may need to go through that process. I'm just giving you a little bit of our members, a little bit of an experience, that we've had and that we've had to face and that you may face if this is your first time in reaching out to Steve and making a purchase. And so is there any other warnings you can think of or any other situations that you would want to bring to members' attention if they are going to purchase metals through you, Steve, for the first time?
Well, 90% of people paying us, Canadian people at least, are making bill payments to us. At the height of the busy winter we had, we're doing apparently almost 1,200 bill payments per day. Silver Gold Bull did over $5 billion last year.
Yeah.
It's a significant player now in the space, based in Alberta, a real success story with 70 people working in the business. And everything's verified. Everything we ship is guaranteed, and everything that you receive is 1,000% guaranteed to be pure and real bullion. If there was ever an incident where it wasn't, it would be the end of this business. So I would encourage anybody to really spend some time, read some of the reviews on the Silver Gold Bull website. There's some 600,000 now 5-star reviews. It's a dynamite company that we lean on here. They handle financially sound, and everything's insured right to your door. So there's, but the banks have been blocking bill payments generally from first timers. So if you've made a bill payment to us before, generally you can do it again without, getting the fraud alert.
Sorry, Steve, explain what a bill payment is. Right away, I'm thinking hydro. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, Silver Gold Bull is aligned as a payee with all the banks in the bill payment section of your online banking. So it's an online bill, but unlike an e-transfer, which are generally limited to $1,000 or $3,000, another sign that the banks want to watch over every transaction, watch how you use your money. A bill payment can generally be made for whatever's in your checking account, and all you have to do is add Silver Gold Bull as a new payee, just like you would Hydro or TELUS, and then add an account number that we set up for Action for Canada members, and then you send us the money, and it arrives the next day, generally, sometimes 2 days. Okay. But the banks have been blocking quite often for suspected fraud, a lot of first-time bill payments over $10,000, and quite often, as a rule, especially CIBC, the bigger banks, Scotia and TD, $50,000. So you can almost expect that. So I often warn customers to let your bank know if you're going to be making a bill payment over $50,000. Let them know you're sane. Let them know you've done this before, and you're buying precious metals, and you're buying them from this company, and do not, block my account, because quite often a fraud alert can lead to they want you to come in and visit the branch and re-verify your identity. And for some people, that means driving an hour into town and, wasting a bunch of time showing up at a bank teller after standing in line in a bank lineup just to show your face and get your account reactivated.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Somebody has asked, when silver hits high, then how do we sell? So say it goes to $600 an ounce. So you would go to somebody like Steve and you would put forward that transaction. Is that correct, Steve?
Absolutely.
All right.
There's actually a button on the website that says sell to us, where you can see all our live buy prices if you're ever in that position where you need some fast cash.
Okay.
Although it won't be fast cash, it will be, in Silver Gold Bull's case, a wire or a direct bank transfer. If you want fast cash, you might look to a neighbor, a local marketplace, a local coin shop like mine, where I'm happy to pay fast cash if you've got a coin to sell.
Okay. And then can you purchase physical silver within a conventional RRSP from a bank?
No, you can only buy physical silver through an RSP enabled by Questrade.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. And so that's where people can reach out to you, and they can transfer whatever their RSP is currently under, probably like a paper asset of some sort, and transfer that into silver. Is that correct?
your first step, if you're not with Questrade, is to activate a new Questrade RSP.
Okay.
And then have your existing provider shuffle some assets over there, the stock or bond or the cash. And then once there is cash in that new RSP, we can help you deal with it.
Okay.
But know that you're never going to own it yourself. You're never going to hold it, I should say, yourself. You're going
It'll
to
go into Brinks.
You're going to pay a facility like ourselves to store it and insure it. And the government, who's a counterparty to your registered RSP, which, the word register means to assign legal title, will be fully aware that you're holding precious metals inside your RSP.
Correct. And so I understand that when you move to that paper asset under an RSP or RIF into hard silver, then you own that. It's hard silver and it's stored generally in Brinks. Now, I've also learned that if you decide to no longer even if you had paper assets in a RIF and you sold them, that money would be transferred into your bank account. You can, if you have now transferred into a silver asset that you hold, you can do it in kind. You can sell it in kind from silver into silver and store it in whatever facility. If you don't want to store it in Brinks, you can store it in another facility, because there are other facilities that store these assets. And then it would no longer be under a RIF, and you would own that silver outright. Unless people had some sort of other home security, wouldn't recommend that if you have a large asset in silver. But that was something that I'd learned as well. You don't have to keep it, because the next question here was, what will stop the government from taking private silver and gold if they pass some kind of law? Because they want to get their grubby hands on everything, right? And they know that this is really of great interest to people pulling their money out. They see that that's happening. The regulators weren't punished for doing nothing in January, so who will stop these people from robbing us all? And that's that insecurity again, right? In the institutions.
Well, they can only rob the assets that are in the accounts that they can seize or suspend. Silver and gold in your own possession really is the safest way to insulate yourself from any robbery, in my opinion. They can't. I think the government, especially in Canada, would be as successful getting your gold and silver, or at least my gold and silver, out of my hands where I have it, as they have been with their gun grab. I just don't see any of our crowd buying into that nonsense. And to me, they know, like I know, that it's less than 1% of Canadians who have these kinds of assets in their own possession. And most of us have them in our own possession. We don't broadcast it to the government. So I think the government's going to go after the easy stuff first. That's going to be the stuff in your bank account and the stuff in your RSP.
Yeah, and when I was talking about bail-ins or bailouts previously, it was, if you'll remember, in 2015, there was that in Greece, there was the international bailouts, and they actually shut the bank accounts of individuals for up to 3 weeks. And they had like strict daily withdrawal limits imposed to prevent a total bank run amid, fears of, I think it was some euro exit and default. So that is the bank bailout that I have in my mind. And so when the government put that in the budget, that's what I'm concerned about, is that they will shut down your ability to access your assets. And that's why it's very important to be prepared for that. If you couldn't get to your bank today, are you prepared somewhat in order? How would you live? How will you buy groceries? Are you prepared for that? And that's what I just really want Canadians to hear. And that's the purpose of this show tonight, is to do a service to our members, to Canadians, that you need to diversify a bit at this time. Again, we're not giving you any advice on what you should do with your finances. We're trying to educate you on, what potentially is coming, and are you prepared for that? Food is another asset. And due to what is happening with the interruptions in our food chains, there are farmers who would generally, their business is wheat, and because of not being able to get all of the means to grow wheat in the volumes that they had, they are saying that there is going to be some problems in the future as far as being able to access flour and other goods. Of course, I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember what state it was in, and they were just traveling through the states and seeing fields and fields of corn and soy, and thinking, oh, look at all of this agriculture. Isn't this great? But no, you can't do a lot with corn and soy, and that those fields used to be filled with cattle. And of course, they're wanting to dissolve the beef industry as well. And so, we need to be prepared for these things as well. And that all of this, in the end, we see that housing is so inflated right now. We hear about the bailout of Carney, just total corruption with the Chinese communists running these condo buildings and the developers behind them. I mean, it is just so disgusting. There is no bailout that should take place with our money, with Canadians' money. These companies need to go belly up and learn from their bad decisions, and that market needs to fall so that our kids can afford to get into the market again. And all of this is working together with the financial system. Everything's inflated. And that, in fact, once silver has reached these highs, and I love how you say in buying silver, you're buying gold, because if you get in at silver right now, gold is so elevated at $6,000 an ounce. It's like, how are you saying that I'm buying gold with silver? Is that because when silver increases and reaches its full capacity, you can then transfer that silver into gold and you'll own gold if that's what you want to do when silver reaches its capacity. So just in case people weren't following what you were saying at that point. So these are a lot of areas to look at with our finances, what these corrupt individuals, the globalists, are trying to do to interfere with our food chain, with our housing, and with our finances. And we need to be aware of that and prepared. So when the market crashes, when our silver reaches capacity, you may be in a good position to also then transfer and start buying, property. That's kind of the cycle of where it goes. So just stay informed. And Steve, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And in closing, is there any final message that you want to give Canadians tonight in protecting their financial future?
Well, I don't have to explain to your listeners, how corrupt, like you just said, how corrupt things are. This government is this liberal, nightmare is they've shown their hand. They're going to steal as much as they can, and that's what socialists do. It really is become, especially in BC. I feel like we're living in one of the most communist jurisdictions in the world today, if not the most. And the history of communism is to steal your wealth through inflation and then hyperinflation. And I fully anticipate that we're going to see a loony crisis that's going to make the peso crisis in Argentina or the Bolivar crisis in Venezuela look like a walk in the park. I mean, there's nothing different between the Argentinian and the Venezuelan economy and the Canadian economy when they were run by socialist crazies. The amount of printing, they were resource rich, both these countries, but they were run by complete biscuit heads and basket cases, and they just drove everything into the ground, bailed everybody out, like you're saying, tried to supply everything to everybody, dissuade work and dissuade hard work and dissuade entrepreneurs. And what do you end up with? A worthless currency.
Yeah. And
I saw a Canadian dollar the other day at 69.3 or 69.7, and I don't think that's the bottom, folks.
No, I agree with you. We're in a dire state here in Canada, but we are not helpless. and there are solutions. And I personally truly believe, and this is only my own personal position, is that every penny that I can to get invest into silver is definitely going to make the future easier. And I just encourage everybody to consider that for themselves and their families, and to do, stock up on food as well. So Steve, thank you so much for coming and spending the time with us. All of the information to contact Steve will be in the description of this video when we launch it tomorrow. So I'm going to encourage you to even just give Steve a phone call and just ask him some questions if we weren't able to answer those tonight. So Steve, thank you so much, and God bless you in all the work that you're doing, and being so generous and kind to Canadians. Okay.
And same to you, Tanya.
All right.
Happy to do it. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Next week, I'm really excited about the guest that's coming on. We've been talking a lot over the last, years about the coronation oath, and that this can save Canada if we'll only make sure that our leaders are going to comply with it. And we've got to hold them up. You know that we've been doing since December. We came out against Bill C-9, against the Governor General, advising her what her limits and her duties were under her oath to the king. And a lot of people were kind of poo-pooing it. Oh, the coronation oath is just ceremonial. And we're saying, no, it's not. It's a binding agreement to govern the Commonwealth according to Judeo-Christian biblical principles. And wouldn't you know, a couple of months ago, that Bishop Dewar ended up making this incredible announcement that the king was in violation of what? The coronation oath, and saying that it's a binding agreement and not just ceremonial. And in fact, he wrote a letter to the king, and it was brilliant. In the call to action, that the weekly email that I send out this Sunday night, I include that video of the bishop reading that letter. And like I say, it was brilliant. You're not going to want to miss this. And so I think that Britain is across the pond, but we are very closely united under this oath, and we're going to have a serious conversation about why this oath needs to be respected in Canada, and what the battle is truly about against these globalists. Yes, it's a battle against good and evil, but it's against the globalists, the communists, the Islamists, whatever group you want to call it. This is a battle for Christianity. And the Commonwealth is founded on biblical Christian principles. And I'm asking people to pick a side. Would you rather live under tyranny or under freedom? And Christian nations have historically been the only nations to offer freedom and democracy. So that, it's a no-brainer to me. I've already chosen my side, so get off the fence and join us. All right. So the Bible verse for today as well, I think it just suits very well to the conversation tonight. And it's from Proverbs 27:12. It says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge." So just think about the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. And so you got to think of the magnitude of that, right? Like, we're telling you there's the danger, there's the possibility that the banks are not going to be serving you well in the future, that the Canadian dollar may not hold up under the pressure. And so that's exactly why we host the programs like this, not to create fear, but to equip Canadians with the knowledge that they need so they can make wise, informed decisions for themselves and their families. And so I'm just praying, like, may God grant each of us the wisdom, discernment, and courage in the days ahead. And so as always, I love to end the show, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. God bless you, and God bless Canada.
Sacrificing so actions are completely 100% unlawful. Judgment will again be found on justice, and those with virtuous hearts will pursue it. You have a virtuous heart if you are here today pursuing freedom and righteousness. And then verse 23 comes along with a promise. God says he will turn the sins of evil people back on them. He will destroy them for their sins. I take great comfort in that because I serve a mighty living God who has allowed us to go through this season of discomfort because we as a nation have turned our backs on him and we need to get right. So I am just going to thank you so much. I'm going to say God bless you and God bless Canada.